Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, and today we're talking about the ABC Movie Challenge. I had issued this movie challenge a few videos back. If any of you are not aware of this, it is where you are going in your collection and trying to find movies going in alphabetical order of things you haven't seen. And this kind of cuts out articles and stuff, so like Anne, A, the, those don't count as like the first part of the title. I mean, if you want to do it that way, you can do it that way too. But for me, I started watching movies on accident. I watched 2 movies in a row, like A, B, and then I was like, okay, might as well just go in this order and try this challenge and, you know, tackle the films that have been sitting on my shelf for a few months to a couple years, which is kind of frightening, honestly. But it's a really good way to tackle a big chunk of your collection and watch films that you haven't really been in the mood to watch for a while. And so this is a nice little challenge. And so I challenged some of my friends. I also challenged you as a viewer to potentially be a part of this thing. I want to know where everyone's at. Has anyone partaken on this challenge? Let me know in the comment section down below how far you've gotten, what you have chosen. I'm kind of curious. This part will be A through M, so it'll be the first half of the alphabet. And I'm only going to briefly talk about each film and then also just talk a little bit about it and what I thought. And yeah, we're just going to talk about each of the movies I've watched for the first 13 letters of the alphabet, A through M. So we're going to first start off with a film that you should be possibly aware of. When I issued the challenge initially, I said I was going to talk about this one. It's from 1959. It is a Criterion from Otto Preminger, the director. Anatomy of a Murder with Jimmy Stewart. We also have Lee Remick, Ben Gazzara, Arthur O'Connell, Eve Arden, and Catherine Grant. It's a procedural drama. It's almost 3 hours long. It's long, but I really love the artwork. I'm looking at the back real quick. Of Saul Bass, who designed this cover, this poster art. And so it's like this weird combination of a film, because this is, 1959, so it's going into the 60s. It's a film that, like, the experimentation of the 60s mixed in with like a Frank Capra procedural drama. It's a strange combination, but I really like it. It's really, really compelling. I don't want to give too much away, but Ben Gazzara's character may or may not have committed a murder, and he doesn't really know if he remembers it or not. There's an altercation. There's some really crazy stuff that kind of happens in the film, and James Stewart is there to defend against some big-time lawyers. And so I always love James Stewart in these procedural dramas, or any way that there's a room and he's talking for a long period of time. I'm about it. How many of you have seen Anatomy of a Murder? I'm kind of curious down in the section down below. So that's the first movie that I watched, starting with the letter A. Now we're going to move on to the letter B, and I watched the Rian Johnson film from 2008, The Brothers Bloom. I want to say 2008? 2009. My bad. The Brick is the first film that he did, and I believe Brothers Bloom might be the second one that he did. Brothers Bloom is a little bit more along the lines of something like Knives Out would be eventually for Rian Johnson. It's got a lot of comedic parts to it, but it's also a serious drama about 2 brothers. One happens to be the name Bloom. That is Adrian Brody's character, but Mark Ruffalo is in this movie as well, who is playing the older brother to him. And they are con artists. They've been con artists their entire life. And it's kind of set up to where there's a narrator kind of narrating this scene and setting, like going back a little bit in time at the very beginning into like the current con that they're in. And they're trying to con Rachel Weisz's character, who is a really not so bright millionaire who has not really had any interaction with people whatsoever. And you kind of learn why she has that happen to her in the movie a little bit. But yeah, she's not very bright, and so they're trying to con her, and there's some conscious things going on with Adrian Brody's like, I don't really want to be a part of these cons anymore. It's always a part of a structure that Mark Ruffalo's character is trying to put him in, and in a role that he's in. So anyway, it's got some dramatic elements to it, some really romantic things as well, but it's very funny. There's a lot of really funny parts to this movie. It's a little bit on the crazy side, like almost Terry Gilliam-ish in some ways. It's really fun. But anyway, Brothers Bloom, how many of you have seen it? It's been sitting on my shelf for a few years, so I'm really glad that I was able to watch it. Next is a film that I recently watched that was actually a recent acquisition from Kino Lorber. This movie is from 1968. It's actually not that long. It's only 90 minutes, 89 minutes. It is The Crimson Cult with Christopher Lee and Boris Karloff. And I really like this movie. It definitely was reminiscent of something along the lines of the Wicker Man in an extent, where this guy kind of just comes to this place that is like, oh, we do this festival all the time, and it's things aren't really what they seem. And there's like a cult that happens to be there. Boris Karloff's there as a really old man because, like I said, 1968. So Boris Karloff is nearing kind of the end. I know he did stuff like The Grinch, How the Grinch Stole Christmas around the same time period. But I just love seeing him and Christopher Lee in a role where it's just like this really crazy satanic thing going on, and it's really colorful. There's some really cheesy parts of this movie too. It's not the greatest movie in the world. It's definitely a B movie, and there are some things in it that are like, really? But if you just kind of go into it just knowing that it's going to be cheesy in some parts, because like there's like some scenes where some of the cults like doing their rituals and their sacrifices and whatnot, and there's this one guy who's like really buff and like almost completely naked. He's got like a codpiece on and these reindeer antlers, and it's just the silliest looking thing, and he's got like a little anvil. It looks really, really funny. And but anyway, The Crimson Cult, it's a fun movie, and it was on sale from Kino Lorber when they had their sale, and I was able to watch this one, and I had a good time. So how many of you have seen this one? That's my letter C. All right, so now we're moving on to the letter D, to a film from Alexander Payne. It came out in 2011. Now, I will say with Alexander Payne, I've only recently been watching some of his films, and I've been pretty happy with it. I kind of had a bad taste with a recent film, Downsizing. I remember that trailer to that movie, and also seeing the critics review. Still haven't seen it, so I can't really speak on it, but it didn't seem to be the thing that I wanted to watch. But I watched The Descendants with George Clooney, and wow, this movie is really hard to watch, but also really entertaining. So at the very beginning of the movie, George Clooney's wife, who is almost at the divorce time, they're about to get a divorce maybe, they're definitely not getting along, she gets put in a coma and is about to die, and so it's really about George Clooney kind of figuring out like, oh, also my wife had an affair with this guy, and also having to deal with that fallout, plus also dealing with his daughters, and how they're growing up and dealing with this thing, and they're just doing a pretty crazy thing. Like his oldest daughter is drunk all the time, and with this really stupid boy who happens to turn out to be a lot smarter than he is. Maybe a little bit wiser, I suppose. He's not that smart. He's very dumb, but it's really comedic as well. So it's like a weird combination of comedy and drama, mostly a really heart-wrenching drama about a man trying to figure out what's going on, and it's but also at the same time it's like very reminiscent of some comedic elements as well. I mean, that's what Alexander Payne, I guess, has been doing. He's been adding some comedy to his drama quite a bit, and so there's a lot of really funny parts to this movie, and it cracked me up quite a bit, but it also made me really sad, and there's some scenes that really like get you. And but yeah, it's been a while. I've had this on my shelf for a couple years, and I'm really happy that I was able to finally watch it, sit through those emotions, and and get through this. And I'm actually looking forward to watching this again relatively soon, because even though I felt things, I want to feel it again, I suppose. But yeah, any of you seen The Descendants? I want to know in the comment section down below. Let's move on to the letter E. All right, so now we're moving on to the letter E. We're talking about a film from 1994, one that I've had on my shelf for a little too long, and it's from Tim Burton, and I've watched many Tim Burton films, but for some reason this one always has evaded me up until this point. I'm talking about Ed Wood, and this is starring Johnny Depp, and Sarah Jessica Parker, among a few other people, where we have Patricia Arquette, Jeffrey Jones, Bill Murray's in this movie as well, Martin Landau. This movie is a lot of fun, and it is the true life events of filmmaker Ed Wood, who really kind of was this guy who was really eccentric. He was a cross-dresser, during a time period where that was seen as very strange to society, I suppose. And with that, he was really emboldened by his vision in making films, and he, I guess, keeps going down these paths where he's like, I have this vision, and like he makes kind of terrible movies, and that's just kind of what he does, and he just kind of embraces it. He embraces who he is, and I really love that. But the kind of the plot with it, he meets Bela Lugosi, and Bela Lugosi is really aged and has really kind of been forgotten by a lot of people. He's kind of addicted to some painkillers, and he's like really troubled. But he meets Ed Wood, and he like gives him like a second revitalization, and like puts him in some of his films, and it's a lot of fun for Bela Lugosi, and he's having a good time. And like, yeah, it's just that connection between him, Ed Wood, and all the people that he's met, like his wives that are in this film as well, and them not dealing really well with his cross-dressing, but also like with his way of life and the way he thinks. But yeah, I just found it really fascinating and really fun. It was really funny and definitely very Tim Burton-y. And you know exactly what I'm talking about with that. But yeah, I'm so happy that I was able to watch this. This is definitely one of my favorite Tim Burton films. Like, yeah, I've only seen it once, but I can definitely tell you this might be one of my favorite ones that he's done. So yeah, Ed Wood, have you seen it? Yeah, it's a good one. We're going to move on from here to the letter F. All right, so moving straight along to the letter F is a film from 1964, and this is actually from Indicator. It is a Ray Harryhausen special effects film, First Men in the Moon, right here. First Men in the Moon. This is directed by Nathan Ajurin, who has done some Sinbad films and stuff. I really had a lot of fun with this movie, and it's really crazy. The special effects, especially near the second half of the movie, are just a ton of fun, and it's super zany. It's like Mary Poppins meets like a space adventure. It's very strange, especially how they get to the moon. It's like 1899 is when I guess the first moon landing was, and that's kind of what the setup of this movie is they're going up there on the moon, in the 60s, and they find this flag, this flag, the Union Jack from England, and they're like, oh, well, what is this? Like, who was here first? And then it goes back, and they find the people who it's connected to, and it's just this really crazy adventure story, and it's a lot of fun. It's so much fun. I mean, how many times have I talked about Harryhausen on my channel and talked about how fun his films are, and the effects that he does. It's not about Harryhausen in particular. That's just like my draw to these types of stories. And yeah, it's a really cool science adventure, like a fantasy sci-fi film. And yeah, look at that right there. And then it has a million special features, as Indicator always does, and it's absolutely amazing. I recommend it. It was in the box set for the Ray Harryhausen set, like the Wonderful Worlds of Ray Harryhausen Volume 2, which I don't have, but I really wish I did. But I had the individual standard release, and I'm happy I do have it. So let's move on from here to the letter G. So now we're moving on to the letter G, to a horror film from 2014, one that I actually have had since, I think, around Halloween time, but I just didn't get around to it, and I've been wanting to watch it for a while. And I've almost always started it, but I just haven't pulled the trigger, and now I finally did. I'm talking about Good Night Mommy. So this is directed by two Austrian filmmakers, Veronika Franz and Severin Fiala. And I know they did The Lodge, I want to believe, that came out a couple years ago. But Good Night Mommy is the film that I think kind of put them on the map. I really like this movie. It's about two twin boys. Their mom just had like reconstructive surgery on her face. She was an actress on TV, and they don't really believe that that's their mom, and it just plays on that. And you see that in this isolated setting, because they're a little bit well off, so they live out in like the countryside, and the kids are definitely not trusting their mom and trying to figure out what the heck is going on, and like these different these different moods that she's in and out of, and yeah, things aren't really what they seem. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. But how many of you have seen Goodnight Mommy? I would recommend seeing it. It's very disturbing, and the climax is a lot of fun. And fun is maybe not the right word, but yeah, Goodnight Mommy. That's all I gotta say about that one. Let's actually move on to the letter H, to a film from 1996. I'm so happy that I was able to finally watch this one. I had a really good time with it. It's one of the only films that I have from this company. It's from Imprint Films in Australia. I finally watched HeartEight, P.T. Anderson's HeartEight with, Philip Baker Hall, John C. Reilly, and Gwyneth Paltrow. They're all in this film. Wow, what a crazy, crazy movie. It's only about 2 hours long. And it's just, we have Philip Baker Hall's character who just kind of picks up John C. Reilly, outside of a diner and like takes him to Vegas and like kind of teaches him the ropes on how to like really like, ring everything and like kind of do everything, with gambling. I don't really know much about gambling myself. Really never gambled myself, but he pretty much teaches him the ways to gamble correctly and like take advantage of the system. And then he runs into Gwyneth Paltrow's character, who is working at one of the gambling casinos, and the story just kind of really goes all over the place from there. A few years after that, Sam Jackson's in this movie as well, and yeah, it definitely feels like a '90s film. And it's really cool that it is the first P.T. Anderson film. I was really excited that it finally had a Blu-ray release from Imprint. And I've loved everything that I've seen from P.T. Anderson, and so I could definitely see that this transition into like Boogie Nights would be the next transition for him, and eventually go into films like all the way up into Phantom Thread, right? I can definitely see that trajectory, but they're also he's dipping his toes in all these different facets, and I really like that a lot. But anyway, HeartEight, great movie, and I if you can get your hands on it, definitely do yourself a favor and get this one. It's a really good, crime story with some really fucked up and crazy parts to it as well. Not super. Yeah, anyway, that's all I'm going to say about it. So watch HeartEight if you haven't seen it. If you can get your hands on it. In America, it might be a little bit costly to ship it your way. And this is an all regions thing that you can watch on any player. So you definitely can get your hands on this one. But I believe there are some sellers that probably have this. I believe that it just recently went out of print though. But anyway, how many of you have seen HeartEight? I want to know in the comment section down below. All right, now we're going to move on to the letter I. And this is this is actually the first film that I've seen from this company. And I only have a few of their titles, but I'm excited and a little bit interested in figuring out more from them. And I'm talking about Severin Films, and I'm talking about the Incubus. Wow, what a crazy movie. This movie is about a killer that keeps killing all these women, having sex with them, violent sex, and just keeps disappearing, and like no one knows what the hell's going on. And it's just absolutely nuts. This movie has John Cassavetes, who is like the main character in this film, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. He is a surgeon, and he's just trying to get the bottom of what is killing these women, what is raping these women. It's very hyper violent, but also at the same time there's a really cool like sequence of like what the hell's going on. And I really like the last 20 minutes of the movie. I think it's really creative and really bizarre. This is directed by John Howe. I believe I'm saying his name right. I don't exactly know if that's that. But John Cassavetes, John Ireland, Carrie Keane, and Helen Hughes is in this movie. It's from 1981. It's a lot of fun. I really like this movie. And obviously I haven't seen very many other Vinegar Syndrome titles, but this is definitely one that was stand out. And a lot of them, everybody that I know has recommended this movie in particular. And I'm definitely not disappointed for this one. It is a hard movie to watch because there's some really graphic and gruesome things that go on in the movie, and some crimes, obviously rape is a huge one in this movie, and it's not very comfortable to sit through. But done in a way, I guess, through this particular film, it's maybe some kind of supernatural entity. Who knows what it is? And so who's doing this? And so it's really interesting. Incubus, have you seen it? I'm curious to know down in the comment section down below. Let's actually move on from here to J. Now, J is a film that I picked that was an epic, and is an epic. It's almost 3 hours long, or I guess 2.5 hours. It is from Victor Fleming, Wizard of Oz, and is an epic from 1948. And I was able to watch the Kino Lorber edition of Joan of Arc with Ingrid Bergman. This is a great epic, and I kind of broke this up into 2 days because it was a long movie. And I had a good time with it. I really loved the color palette. Obviously, Victor Fleming is known for that in his productions and in his epics. And I really love Ingrid Bergman's character as Joan. And she, I think, played a very stoic and very pious Joan of Arc, but really demanded through her performance, like, you know, like kind of a childlike innocence to her, because she doesn't really know what's going on, because obviously she's like 19 when she dies. Spoilers if you don't know about what happens to Joan of Arc. But you know, it's interesting to see that, plus also like the strength that she has, and I think that is personified very, very well with Ingrid Bergman. Obviously, I'm only really familiar with the 1928 Passion of Joan of Arc, and I really love that film. So it's a very different type. This is definitely more of the studio-based type of film, where that one is a little bit more on the art house side of things. But if you really want to know the story of Joan of Arc, I would definitely recommend this the story right here from Kino Lorber. Yeah, it's really good. This is the alternate cover. I like this edition, the cover a little bit more than the other one. But yeah, if you haven't checked this one out, do yourself a favor. It's good. And you can definitely divide it into 2 sittings. That's perfectly fine. All right, we're nearing the end. Now we're moving on to K. So for K, I actually picked another film that was long overdue on my list, and also a longer film. It's about 2.5 hours. And I really, really loved that I chose this one, because I really only picked it up because I saw it on sale. I want to say I got it from Dollar General maybe a year ago. And I had really not heard much from it, but it is a winner of 3 Academy Awards, and it came out back in 1984, and it is directed by Roland Joffe, yeah. It's The Killing Fields, and I really enjoyed this movie. This is a movie about the Khmer Rouge, and about the journalist who went in during this tumultuous period and was friends with an interpreter right here. These 2 characters are here, and pretty much going in and trying to survive and trying to cover this story and what's going on, you know, within the government and this rebellion and all these executions and just mass amounts of death. Hence the name Killing Fields. That is still impacted this area of the world today. And with the Khmer Rouge, and this is really kind of a story about their relationship and the survival between the 2. And I won't really give too much away, because I think it's definitely worth like watching it and like experiencing this movie. It's a hard movie to watch. It really is. And I will say that. But it definitely has really, really great performances. I believe the score is just really, really great. And I also think that the cinematography is bar none, and I think it's beautifully shot and really, really well crafted. And it definitely deserved the Academy Awards that it won. And it's just so crazy this is true. And it's about, you know, the killing fields in Cambodia. So how many of you have seen this movie? I'm really happy that I was able to watch it, and this is the Digipack. It's a little beat up, but you know, the movie is what I care about. So that's what I watched for K. Now we're going to move on to the letter L. And I wanted to go a little bit on the zanier side of things, and I wanted to watch something a little bit ridiculous. And so I actually initially had another movie here, but I'm like, no, I want to watch this silly movie from 1989 with Sylvester Stallone and Donald Sutherland. I watched Lock Up, and I actually had a good time with this movie. I actually looked up, you know, this movie a little bit, and saw that it has a lot of negative comments. The movie's fine. like it's exactly what you'd expect. I guess for the time period, though, it was like a big part of a letdown. Donald Sutherland falsely imprisons Sylvester Stallone. I guess Sylvester Stallone escaped Donald Sutherland in a past prison, and so like he pretty much takes advantage of the system and like brings him back in there, and pretty much is like stuck there. And Sylvester Stallone has to figure out a way to survive, and surviving that is done through like all the guards who are underneath Donald Sutherland, and then all the prisoners who are just giving him a hard time as well. So it's just really one of those types of films. Like it's exactly what you'd expect, and it's kind of crazy. There's some montages going on in this movie too. It's the late 80s, but there's also, you know, the human element that's a part of it too. And I had a good time with it. It's definitely what you'd expect. It's definitely not the best movie ever. Like it's clearly like a 5 or a 6 out of 10 type of film, but it's definitely not like a 2 out of 5 or whatever. I don't exactly know how to define it, but yeah, it's a fun movie, and if you go into it just like expecting like something, you at least watch Donald Sutherland's character. He's just like he's a motherfucker in this movie, and that's probably the best part of it is Donald Sutherland. So yeah, Lock Up. Have you seen it? I want to know in the comment section down below. Let's move on to my last film, The Letter M, the one that I literally just finished not an hour ago. It was 3 hours long because I watched the extended cut edition of this one. And I guess this movie had a lot of pushback for when it came out. So this came out in 2011. I believe it was supposed to come out like 5 years prior to this, but put out by Fox Searchlight Pictures. But I guess Kenneth Lonergan did not like the edition of this film, and eventually in 2011 came up with a compiled version of it, and or 2012 I think is when he finished that extended edition. But so there's 2 editions of Margaret right here, and Margaret is like an epic teen film. When I say epic, it's like it's literally 3 hours long. The extended, that's the one I watched. The one I have here is the DVD copy of it with the extended cut on it. The Blu-ray has the theatrical cut, but apparently that the one to watch is the extended cut. Because, like I said, Kenneth Lonergan, his stuff was cut down quite a bit, and he didn't want that. And this has a lot of people. It's starring Anna Paquin, who is the main character, Lisa, and she witnesses like a horrific accident, and she's already in a position where she is trying to figure out things because she's growing up, and she's about to exit high school and trying to figure out what that looks like, and trying to see what school's next. But also there's boys, there's teachers that are involved that she might be interested in, and then she also is dealing with her mom and her dad, their divorce. Her mom's trying to see new people, but she's also an actress, and so she's really nervous with that. Their relationship's really messed up, and it's really all about relationships, and there's so many people in this movie. J. Smith Cameron, Jean Reno, Jeannie Berlin, Allison Janney, Matthew Broderick, Mark Ruffalo, Matt Damon, a lot of people in this movie, and they all play a really big role to it. And I definitely did not feel the runtime of the 3 hours. I split it up into 2. I watched it a little bit last night, and I watched the rest of it today, and I was definitely very pleased with the movie. It's a really hard movie to watch. There's a lot of really crazy parts of this movie that you have to sit through. But at the same time, it teaches you a lot. And I mean, if you've seen his Kenneth Lonergan's work in the past, like something like Manchester by the Sea, which would come out later than this, he puts some really deep and tough things to watch. And I don't know, I really loved it. This is a movie that I think is underrated, and a movie that's not really talked about much. And I'm very happy I saw this one, because this one literally has been on my shelf for like 3 years now. And I finally had the opportunity and chance to watch it, and I'm so happy I did. So those are my films from A through M. What about you? Have you been watching any of these films? Have you seen any of these films before? Have you been participating in the challenge? What are you excited about next? Yeah, I just want to say thank you for watching this video. It's a little bit longer, but yeah, thank you again. I'm curious to know your thoughts on the challenge itself. Give it a like, share, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.